Before we collectively step into a world where shadows cling to the urban sprawl, I want to share a small tale. An old storyteller once whispered to me that every narrative we absorb, every character we journey with, holds a fragment of our own being. We discover our fears in the villains, our resilience in the heroes, and sometimes the bewildering enigma of human nature in acts that defy explanation. The story you are about to read is one such tale. It will challenge your courage, test the boundaries of your understanding of evil, and perhaps compel you to cast a second glance at the shadows lurking within the very vibrant cities we call home. If you are ready to embark on this journey, to uncover the most terrifying mysteries, and to witness if justice can pierce the deepest gloom, then ensure you hit that subscribe button to not miss a single chapter in this thrilling series. Join me now as we unlock the door to the world of the Obsidian Carver. The city of Los Angeles, a sprawling tapestry of dreams and shadows, glittered under a sky that rarely slept. But even in its ceaseless hum, a new, chilling discord began to resonate, subtle at first, then growing into a crescendo of terror. It began, as many nightmares do, quietly, insidiously. It was a Tuesday night when the call came in for Detective Sergeant Elijah Miller, a man whose face was a roadmap of the city's underbelly, lines etched by years of witnessing its brutal truths. The address was a nondescript apartment complex in Silver Lake, a haven for struggling artists and dreamers clinging to the edges of possibility. The victim, Sarah Jenkins, 27, a barista with an aspiring photography career, known for her wide, optimistic smile and the scent of lavender that always seemed to cling to her. Miller found her in her small, artfully cluttered living room, bathed in the anemic glow of police flashlights. She lay on a worn rug, her eyes open, staring at a ceiling she would never again truly see. The scene was meticulously arranged, almost artistic in its macabre presentation. Her hands were folded over her chest, a single, deep incision, precise and clean, tracing a delicate, unfamiliar symbol onto her skin, right above her heart. It wasn't a gang sign, nor a cult marking anyone recognized. It was something else, something alien. No forced entry, Miller. Officer Davies, a fresh-faced rookie whose eyes still held the innocent horror of a first responder, reported, his voice tight. No signs of struggle. Looks like she knew her killer, or was taken completely by surprise. Miller knelt, his gaze sweeping over the room. No broken glass, no overturned furniture, nothing to suggest a violent struggle. A half-finished painting stood on an easel, vibrant with hopeful blues and yellows, a stark contrast to the scene of death. The only disturbance was the silent violence itself. He noticed a small, black, polished stone resting on a nearby coffee table, perfectly spherical, unnaturally smooth. He pointed it out to forensics. Bag that. Dr. Anya Sharma, the lead medical examiner, a woman whose calm demeanor belied the horrors she routinely faced, arrived shortly. Her brow furrowed as she examined the victim. Remarkably clean-cut, Elijah, almost surgical. And this symbol, I've never seen anything like it. It's almost carved into her. Carved? Miller repeated, the word chilling him more than he cared to admit. The symbol itself was abstract, a series of interlocking, sharp angles forming a stylized C, or perhaps a broken S. It held no clear meaning, only a disturbing sense of deliberate intent. The initial investigation yielded little. Neighbors heard nothing. Sarah had no enemies, no disgruntled ex-lovers, no debts. She was, by all accounts, an ordinary young woman leading an unremarkable life, until it was brutally, meticulously ended. The black stone, later analyzed, proved to be obsidian volcanic glass. Its surface was so smooth, it offered no fingerprints, no clues. It was merely a calling card, a silent declaration. 2 weeks later, the city's fragile calm shattered once more. The victim was Mark Thorne, a successful, albeit controversial, venture capitalist known for his cutthroat business dealings. He was found in his sprawling Beverly Hills mansion, in his study, surrounded by priceless art and first editions. Like Sarah, there was no forced entry, no struggle. He sat in his leather armchair, a half-empty glass of scotch on a nearby table, as if merely contemplating his next deal. But across his chest, precisely where Sarah's symbol had been, was the identical, intricate carving. And on his antique mahogany desk, another obsidian sphere. The contrast between the victims was jarring. Sarah, the struggling artist; Mark, the titan of industry. No apparent connection, no shared social circles, no geographical proximity beyond being in the same vast city. This wasn't a targeted hit, not a revenge killing in the conventional sense. This was something far more sinister. Miller felt a cold, not tighten in his stomach. This wasn't random, but the randomness was the pattern. It was a statement. But what statement? The media, initially cautious, exploded. The Silver Lake slasher screamed one tabloid. Another, more ominously, dubbed him the Phantom Carver. The police, however, were still calling him unidentified subject, and the public's fear grew with each evasive press conference. The LAPD created a task force, and Miller, with his gritty street smarts and unyielding determination, was put in charge. He assembled a team of seasoned detectives, forensic specialists, and analysts, but even their collective experience struggled against the sheer absence of conventional clues. Days bled into nights, fueled by stale coffee and the grim reality of endless paperwork. Miller found himself staring at the victims' photos, searching for a ghost of a connection, a shared thread. Sarah Jenkins, photography, bright, working-class background. Mark Thorne, finance, ruthless, old money. The only commonality was the method, the precision, the obsidian, and that chilling, unreadable symbol. Then came the third. Maria Rodriguez, a 60-year-old grandmother, a seamstress who lived in a vibrant, close-knit Latino community in East LA. She was found in her modest home, surrounded by spools of colorful thread and half-finished garments. Her hands were delicately folded, her eyes serene, and etched onto her skin, the same unsettling symbol. An obsidian sphere lay on her antique sewing machine. The city reeled. A barista, a millionaire, a grandmother. The sheer disparate nature of the victims created an unprecedented wave of fear. No one was safe. No one fit a profile. The killer was everywhere and nowhere. The FBI was finally called in. Special Agent Evelyn Reed arrived with a reputation that preceded her, a brilliant profiler, known for her sharp intellect and unnerving ability to delve into the darkest corners of the human psyche. She was younger than Miller, perhaps early 40s, with striking analytical eyes and an air of quiet intensity that commanded respect without demanding it. Miller met her at the task force headquarters, a repurposed warehouse now bustling with the grim energy of the investigation. He was skeptical, weary of outside interference, but the desperation was mounting. "Detective Miller," she said, extending a firm hand. "Agent Reed, I've reviewed the preliminary reports on the flight over. The media has dubbed him the Obsidian Carver, a moniker I find surprisingly apparent. We're just calling him unidentified subject right now." "Agent," Miller grunted, gesturing to the overflowing whiteboards covered in victim profiles, potential timelines, and a frustrating lack of breakthroughs. Reed walked slowly, her gaze sweeping over the organized chaos. She stopped at the enlarged photos of the victims, her expression unreadable. Sarah Jenkins, Mark Thorne, Maria Rodriguez. 3 distinct demographics, 3 different lives, 3 different areas of the city. Yet, the same ritualistic precision. The obsidian stone. The symbol. She paused, turning to face Miller. "He's telling us something, detective. Something beyond the act of murder itself." "What do you think he's saying?" Miller asked, his voice tinged with a challenge he didn't intend. Reed's eyes narrowed. "He's saying he's above us. He's saying he's in control. He's saying he's chosen them, not at random, but with a purpose that only he understands. And he's carving his signature not as a warning, but as a declaration of his own unique, twisted artistry." She spent the next few days immersed in the case files, poring over crime scene photos, autopsy reports, and witness statements. She interviewed the first responders, the forensics team, even Dr. Sharma multiple times, pressing for details others might have overlooked. Her approach was methodical, almost surgical, much like the killer's work. "The lack of struggle, detective, is significant," Reed stated during one of their late-night debriefs, the warehouse eerily quiet save for the hum of computers. "He's either a master of surprise, exceptionally strong, or he's disarming his victims psychologically. Perhaps he charms them, or incapacitates them without a fight." Maria Rodriguez was a small woman, but Mark Thorne was a large man, and Sarah Jenkins wasn't frail. To subdue all three without a trace of struggle suggests something beyond brute force. Miller mused, rubbing his temples. The sheer audacity of the killer was infuriating. Reed nodded. "And the symbol. We've run it through every database imaginable: cults, ancient languages, obscure art. Nothing. What if it's not a known symbol, but something personal? Something he created, or something that holds meaning only to him?" "A personal brand of evil," Miller muttered. "Precisely," Reed agreed. "And the obsidian, volcanic glass, formed from extreme heat and pressure, then cooled rapidly. Smooth, dark, sharp, is a symbol of transformation, of creation and destruction. But it's also remarkably common. The killer isn't making it rare for us. He's making it symbolic." She began to construct a profile layer by painstaking layer. "He's organized, highly intelligent, obsessive. He plans his attacks meticulously. He's probably socially adept enough to gain access to his victims without raising suspicion. He enjoys the hunt, the control, the ritual. The post-mortem acts, the folding of hands. The carvings suggest a profound need for order, for aesthetic control, even in death." "What about a motive?" Miller pressed. "Why these three? What's the common thread?" Reed paused, staring at the corkboard where the victims' lives were mapped out in intricate detail. "That's the elusive piece. But I have a theory. What if the commonality isn't who they were, but what they represented? Or, more chillingly, what they lacked? Perhaps he sees himself as a sculptor, and his victims as raw material. He's not just killing them. He's transforming them into something else, something that fits his twisted vision." The theory, while unsettling, offered a new avenue of thought. It shifted the focus from conventional victimology to the killer's internal landscape. But without a tangible link, it remained largely theoretical. The city, meanwhile, was in a state of suspended animation. Restaurants were emptier, streets quieter after dark. The vibrant nightlife that defined LA seemed to dim, replaced by a pervasive anxiety. Parents kept their children indoors, and every stranger was viewed with suspicion. The Obsidian Carver had not just taken lives. He had stolen the city's sense of security, replaced it with a creeping dread that permeated every conversation, every news report. Miller's home life also suffered. His teenage daughter, Chloe, usually vibrant and independent, was now visibly anxious, constantly texting him, checking in. His wife, Sarah, worried endlessly, her eyes tracking him with a silent plea for safety every time he left for another marathon shift. He tried to reassure them, but the words felt hollow even to him. How could he promise safety when the monster they hunted seemed to materialize out of thin air, leaving only death and an inscrutable message? One evening, as Miller drove home, exhausted and defeated, a news report on the radio caught his attention. A criminologist, interviewed for a segment on the crisis, spoke about the psychology of serial killers who leave signatures. "The signature is not necessary for the murder itself," the expert explained. "It's a ritual, a personalized calling card that fulfills a psychological need for the killer. It's a way of saying, 'This is my work. This is me.'" Miller gripped the steering wheel, the words echoing Reed's own assessment. His work, his artistry. The thought sent a shiver down his spine. They weren't just hunting a killer. They were hunting an artist of death, a deranged sculptor whose medium was human flesh and whose canvas was the city itself. The chapter closed with Miller staring at the city lights from his balcony, a silhouette against the endless glow. Somewhere out there, the Obsidian Carver moved, unseen, unheard, already contemplating his next masterpiece, his next victim. And the city held its breath, waiting for the next cut. The first 3 were just the prologue. The true horror had only just begun to unfold. The lull after Maria Rodriguez's murder was short-lived, a mere breath held before the next devastating blow. 3 weeks of intense, fruitless searching only deepened the city's collective anxiety. Then, the Obsidian Carver struck again, with a chilling escalation that confirmed Agent Reed's darkest predictions. The 4th victim was Dr. Arthur Finch, a prominent astrophysicist and university lecturer, known for his eccentric theories and his disdain for conventional thought. He was found in his office at the Griffith Observatory, a place of scientific wonder that now bore the indelible stain of horror. His body was meticulously arranged, seated at his telescope, gazing out at the star-studded firmament. The same precise carving adorned his chest, and an obsidian sphere rested on his star chart. But this time something was different. A small, intricately folded paper, no larger than a matchbook, was tucked into his pocket. Miller, arriving on scene, felt a fresh wave of nausea. The observatory, usually a symbol of humanity's quest for understanding, now felt like a stage for a cosmic horror. The sheer audacity of killing someone in such an iconic public space during the dead of night, undetected, was unnerving. Reed, her face grim, carefully handled the folded paper with gloved hands. "This is new," she murmured, her analytical eyes scanning the office. "He's escalating. He's not just leaving a signature. He's actively engaging with us now." The paper contained a single, carefully handwritten line, almost calligraphic in its elegance. "The cosmos spins, a perfect dance, unseen. Only those who truly perceive unveil its sheen." Miller stared at the cryptic message. Poetry? He fancies himself a poet now. Reed shook her head slowly. "Not poetry, detective. A riddle. A taunt. He wants us to understand him, or at least to try. He's challenging us." She looked at Dr. Finch's body, then at the telescope pointed upwards. An astrophysicist. He gazed at the stars, searching for universal truths. What does this message mean in his context? The task force plunged into a deeper level of analysis. The message was scrutinized, every word parsed, every possible interpretation considered. Meanwhile, the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit (BAU), back in Quantico, led by Reed, intensified their efforts, constructing a more detailed psychological profile of the Carver. "He's operating on a profound sense of intellectual superiority," Reed explained to the team. "He views himself as an enlightened individual, a visionary whose actions hold a deeper meaning that we, the unseeing masses, are incapable of grasping. The victims are chosen not for their intrinsic worth, but for what they represent in his twisted narrative." Sarah Jenkins, the struggling artist, perhaps someone who sought beauty but failed to capture it in his eyes. Miller theorized, piecing together Reed's framework. Mark Thorne, the greedy capitalist, blind to the true value of life. Maria Rodriguez, the simple seamstress, focused on mundane threads, missing the grand tapestry. And Dr. Finch, the scientist who looked at the stars but perhaps missed the truths on Earth. Or, more likely, missed his truth, Reed corrected. He's judging them. He's a self-appointed judge, jury, and executioner, delivering what he perceives as a profound, aesthetic justice. The new insight, while chilling, gave them a new direction. Instead of looking for traditional connections, they started examining the symbolic lives of the victims. What message was the Carver trying to send through each killing? What social archetypes was he targeting? The police also focused on the logistics. How was he gaining access? How was he leaving no trace? Reed hypothesized that the Carver was meticulous in his choice of entry and exit points, likely casing locations for weeks, exploiting blind spots in surveillance, or using advanced techniques to bypass security systems. He was a ghost, leaving only death and cryptic messages behind. Public panic reached a fever pitch. The news cycle was dominated by the Obsidian Carver. Talk shows debated his motives, criminologists offered conflicting theories, and amateur sleuths flooded police lines with improbable leads. Children drew crude pictures of the symbol in their notebooks. Vigilante groups emerged, further complicating law enforcement's efforts. The city was on edge, a collective paranoia gripping its millions. Miller found himself working almost exclusively with Reed now. Their styles were different. Miller, the hardened street detective relying on instinct and legwork. Reed, the cerebral profiler dissecting minds and motives. Yet, a grudging respect had formed between them, fueled by their shared determination to stop the monster. "We need to get into his head, Miller," Reed insisted one late night, staring at the growing wall of evidence. "Understand his pathology. He's not just killing, he's communicating. We need to decipher his language." They painstakingly analyzed the first message. "The cosmos spins, a perfect dance, unseen. Only those who truly perceive unveil its sheen." They cross-referenced it with Dr. Finch's life, his work, his publications. Finch was known for his controversial theories on cosmic consciousness, on a hidden order in the universe. Was the Carver ridiculing him? Or was he aligning himself with Finch's ideas, but taking them to a horrifying extreme? The pressure mounted exponentially. The mayor held daily press conferences, demanding answers. The governor promised unlimited resources. But resources meant little when the enemy was an enigma. Then came the fifth victim. This time, the Carver chose a more public, yet equally remote, location. A quiet section of the Hollywood Walk of Fame during the pre-dawn hours. The victim, Jeremy Vance, a struggling screenwriter, discovered lying beside the star of a legendary film director, his face serene, his hands folded, the familiar carving, the obsidian sphere, and another note. This time, the message was, "Stories unfold, on silver screens, by those who weave their fleeting dreams. Yet only true art, pure and grand, will leave its mark upon the land." The connection to Jeremy Vance was obvious. A screenwriter, a weaver of dreams. The Carver was directly addressing the victim's life, their aspirations, and, in his twisted view, their perceived failures. He was a critic, a judge, and a censor all rolled into one psychopathic package. Reed, examining the note, noticed a subtle difference. The handwriting, while still elegant, had a slight tremor in one of the downstrokes, almost imperceptible. "He's not as calm as he portrays himself," she observed. "There's a hairline crack in his composure. The escalation, the notes, it's a sign of increased emotional investment, perhaps even a growing sense of urgency or frustration." "Frustration with what?" Miller asked. "That we haven't caught him? Perhaps," Reed mused. "Or frustration that his art isn't being fully appreciated. That his messages aren't being understood by the masses. He's trying harder to make us see." The task force now had two distinct messages to dissect. The thematic link was perception and art/legacy. The Carver saw himself as the only one who truly perceived, the only one who truly created art that would leave a lasting mark. They began to develop a geographical pattern, a loose triangle connecting the locations of the first four murders, with the fifth victim falling outside that initial cluster but still within a recognizable LA radius. It wasn't a tight, predictable pattern, but rather an erratic expansion, as if the Carver was exploring his canvas. Miller's life outside the case became almost non-existent. Chloe was withdrawn, spending hours on her phone, glued to news reports about the Carver. Sarah tried to keep things normal, but the strain was visible in her tired eyes. "You're losing yourself in this, Elijah," she'd whispered one night, her hand on his arm. "Don't let him take you too." But Miller couldn't pull away. The Carver had invaded his city, his home, his mind. He saw the symbol in the abstract patterns of street lights, heard the killer's taunts in the city's ceaseless hum. Reed, meanwhile, pushed her team to expand the search parameters for potential suspects. They looked for individuals with a history of artistic or philosophical aspirations, a sense of intellectual superiority, social isolation despite being able to interact, and a meticulous, obsessive personality. They cross-referenced academic records, mental health databases, art school dropouts, and even obscure philosophy forums. The net was cast wide, but the suspects were in the tens of thousands. A breakthrough, however small, came from forensics. A microscopic fiber, almost invisible to the naked eye, was found on Jeremy Vance's clothing. It was a synthetic blend, highly specialized, used in high-end mountaineering gear. Not common, but not unique enough to pinpoint. Still, it was a physical lead, the first tangible shred of the killer they had. He's an outdoor enthusiast? Miller mused, staring at the photo of the fiber. Doesn't fit the cerebral artist profile perfectly. Or it's a misdirection, Reed countered. Or he simply wears high-quality, durable clothing that allows him to move freely and without leaving traces. Remember, he's organized. He thinks of everything. The tension in the task force office was palpable. Every phone call, every piece of evidence, was met with a desperate hope that this would be it. But the Carver remained elusive, a shadow flitting through the city's blind spots. One night, exhausted, Miller found himself in the autopsy lab with Dr. Sharma, looking at the photos of the carvings. Have you ever found anything at all, underneath these cuts? Any residue, any tool marks that are more specific? Dr. Sharma, her face tired but focused, pointed to a high-resolution image of the symbol on Jeremy Vance. Look closely, Elijah. Right here at the very edge of one of the angles. There's a faint, almost imperceptible scratch mark. Suggests a very fine, very hard blade. Almost like a jeweler's tool, or a specialized craft knife. This was it. Not just a clean cut, but a specific type of implement. The specialized fiber, the craft knife, the philosophical notes. A composite was slowly forming. An intelligent, meticulous individual, possibly with a background in fine arts, crafts, or perhaps even a meticulous scientific field, who also enjoyed outdoor pursuits or simply used high-performance gear. Someone with a deep, twisted intellectual core. Reed, on hearing the new forensic detail, had a flash of insight. Obsidian, the carving, the precision. What if the symbol isn't just carved into them, but is inspired by something that itself is carved or shaped? She pulled up images of ancient carvings, intricate geometries, and even modern architectural designs. The task force was still stumped. The final days of the chapter were a whirlwind of activity, chasing down leads, interviewing anyone who had ever interacted with the victims in a meaningful way, no matter how tenuous the connection. They learned that Jeremy Vance had submitted a script to a local film festival, a dark, philosophical piece about the meaning of art. Dr. Finch had recently published an essay criticizing modern society's lack of true perception. Maria Rodriguez had won awards for her intricate embroidery. Sarah Jenkins had experimented with abstract photography, capturing unseen patterns. Mark Thorne had been known for his art collection, particularly abstract sculpture. The common thread solidified: art, perception, meaning, legacy. The Carver wasn't just a killer. He was a self-styled arbiter of art and truth, correcting what he saw as imperfections in the human tapestry. As the chapter drew to a close, a new sense of urgency permeated the task force. They were closer, they felt it. The Carver was pushing, challenging them, and in doing so, he was revealing more of himself. The shadow had deepened, but its outline was starting to become visible, faint, terrifying, yet discernible. Miller and Reed shared a look of grim determination. They were in a race against time, a psychological chess match with a madman whose next move was always one step ahead. The city braced itself, knowing that the next strike would not just be another murder, but another piece of the killer's chilling puzzle. The sixth victim arrived, and with it, a terrifying clarity that finally brought the Obsidian Carver into sharp, dreadful focus. The victim was Eleanor Vance, a retired high school art teacher, known for her sharp wit and her passion for ceramics. She was found in her workshop, surrounded by her exquisite pottery, her hands folded, the familiar symbol carved into her chest, an obsidian sphere on her potter's wheel. The message, meticulously placed: form and clay, in silent grace, where true beauty finds its space. Yet some create with hollow soul, and never reach their destined goal. But this time, the note wasn't the only addition. Tucked beneath Eleanor's left hand was a small, crudely drawn sketch. It was a rendering of the obsidian symbol, but with an arrow pointing to a specific, almost hidden detail within its interlocking angles, a tiny, almost invisible broken line. Reed stared at the sketch, her breath catching. He's not just leaving riddles anymore. He's giving us the key. Miller, his heart pounding, looked at the sketch, then back at the familiar symbol on the wall. What does that broken line mean? It's a flaw, Reed whispered, her mind racing. A deliberate imperfection. He's showing us his contempt for imperfect art, for hollow souls who create without true grace. But more importantly, he's showing us a flaw in his design, in his symbol. A deliberate error that might be a clue to its origin. The task force immediately began cross-referencing the broken line with every piece of information they had on the victims and the symbol itself. Hours later, a young analyst, rubbing his tired eyes, shouted, "I think I've got it. The broken line. It matches a specific architectural detail on a building, a very old, obscure building." He pulled up images on the main screen. It was an abandoned Art Deco building in downtown LA, slated for demolition. Once the headquarters of a defunct architectural firm known for its intricate, almost obsessive, geometric designs. The building's original facade, particularly a frieze above the main entrance, featured a stylized, interlocking design that, when rotated and distorted, revealed a motif strikingly similar to the Carver's symbol. And within that frieze, a specific, almost imperceptible broken line that matched the sketch. The building was designed by Elias Thorne, the analyst continued, his voice trembling with the weight of the discovery. A brilliant but notoriously difficult architect. He was obsessed with perfect forms, with leaving an indelible mark. He died in obscurity, disillusioned that his genius wasn't recognized by the public or his peers. Miller and Reed exchanged a look of dawning horror. Elias Thorne, Mark Thorne. Mark Thorne, the venture capitalist, was his great-grandson, Miller stated, recalling the initial victim profiles. And Mark was instrumental in selling off the building, ignoring historical preservation efforts. He despised his great-grandfather's unprofitable artistic vision. And Sarah Jenkins, the photographer, once did an art project focused on abandoned historical buildings in LA, including this one, Reed added, pulling up old case notes. She even took photos of that very frieze. Maria Rodriguez, the seamstress, was known for her intricate embroidery, a direct parallel to the complex designs. Dr. Finch, the astrophysicist, his theories on cosmic patterns and hidden orders. And Jeremy Vance, the screenwriter, with his fleeting dreams of leaving a mark. And Eleanor Vance, Miller finished, a chilling realization washing over him. Her focus on pottery, on forming and shaping. She once campaigned for the preservation of historical architectural elements. The motive finally snapped into place. The Carver wasn't just killing. He was executing a deranged form of artistic vengeance, punishing those he perceived as debasing art, ignoring legacy, or failing to grasp true artistic or philosophical meaning. And at the center of it all was the legacy of Elias Thorne, a forgotten artist whose genius, in the Carver's eyes, had been desecrated. He sees himself as Elias Thorne's true heir, the keeper of his flame, Reed articulated, her voice hushed. He's a ghost of a forgotten artist, seeking posthumous recognition through bloodshed. The hollow souls and fleeting dreams are those who, in his twisted perception, have failed to understand or honor true artistry, particularly the legacy of Elias Thorne. The broken line was the final piece of the puzzle. It was a deliberate flaw in Elias Thorne's design, a subtle imperfection that only a true aficionado, or someone intimately connected to Thorne's work, would recognize and replicate. The Carver wasn't just inspired by Thorne. He was obsessed with him, almost embodying him. We need to find out who has access to that building, who's obsessed with Elias Thorne, and who fits our psychological profile, Miller declared, adrenaline coursing through him. The list of suspects, refined by this new understanding, narrowed dramatically. They focused on individuals who had historical, artistic, or familial ties to Elias Thorne and his architectural firm. One name rose to the top, Julian Vance. Julian Vance, No relation to Jeremy Vance or Eleanor Vance. The shared surname was a grim coincidence, a testament to the killer's detachment. Was a disgraced art historian, once brilliant, now living in bitter obscurity. He had published several scathing critiques of contemporary art, lambasting it for its shallowness and lack of true vision. He was a known recluse, lived in the shadow of his once promising academic career, and harbored a profound, almost fanatical admiration for Elias Thorne. His writings often invoked Thorne's unappreciated genius, using it as a benchmark for his own jaded view of the art world. Moreover, Julian Vance had worked for a brief period as an architectural preservationist, granting him access to the very building in question before it was abandoned. He had the intellect, the obsession, the philosophical underpinnings, and the profound sense of grievance that aligned perfectly with the carver's profile. A quick background check revealed he was a skilled hobbyist in precision crafts and once taught a specialized course on the tools of ancient sculptors. The fiber. Julian Vance was known for his love of hiking and often wore high-performance outdoor gear. The picture was complete. The Obsidian Carver had a name. "It's him," Reed stated, her voice devoid of emotion, only chilling certainty. "He's our man." The arrest plan was meticulously laid out. Julian Vance lived in a quiet, isolated cabin nestled in the hills overlooking the city, far from the urban sprawl he so disdained. A tactical team, led by Miller and Reed, moved in under the cover of a pre-dawn fog, the very element of stealth the Carver himself had so masterfully exploited. They breached the cabin with silent precision. Inside, the cabin was not the squalid mess of a madman, but an organized, almost sterile environment. Bookshelves overflowed with works on art history, philosophy, and architectural design. A dedicated workspace held a collection of specialized carving tools, some with microscopic traces of blood that forensics would later confirm matched the victims. On a large, meticulously organized desk, there was a detailed blueprint of the abandoned Elias Thorne building and a chilling collection of photos. Each of the 6 victims, their faces circled, their offenses against art or legacy meticulously annotated in precise, elegant script. Next to them, a tray of polished obsidian spheres. Julian Vance was found in a small, sparse room, meditating, his eyes closed. He was a slender man, unassuming, with an intensity that radiated even in repose. He opened his eyes as Miller entered, showing no surprise, no fear, only a chilling, almost triumphant, resignation. "You took your time," Vance said, his voice calm, articulate, completely devoid of panic. "I almost thought you wouldn't understand my message." "We understand it now, Julian," Miller growled, his hand on his weapon. "And we understand you." "Do you?" Vance chuckled, a dry, academic sound. "Do you truly understand the corruption, the mediocrity, the utter disregard for true beauty that infects this city, this world? I merely sought to correct it, to carve out a new understanding, a new appreciation for what is pure and lasting." Reed stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. "You killed innocent people, Julian. You shattered lives, inflicted terror." "Innocent?" Vance scoffed, pushing himself slowly to his feet. Sarah Jenkins, whose art was a superficial mimicry of true photographic vision. Mark Thorne, who desecrated a legacy for profit. Maria Rodriguez, whose intricate work lacked the grand scope. Dr. Finch, who saw the stars but missed the inherent artistic order of life. Jeremy Vance, whose stories were ephemeral, lacking true substance. Eleanor Vance, who understood the craft but not the profound purpose of true artistic creation. They were all hollow, agent, unworthy. "And you were the judge?" Miller spat. "Someone had to be," Vance replied, his eyes gleaming with a terrifying conviction. "Someone had to show them what it meant to leave a mark. A real mark. An obsidian carver, if you will." He paused, looking directly at Reed. "You almost got it with the cosmos, agent. The unseen dance. But you never quite grasped the perfection of the design." The arrest was made without further incident. Julian Vance offered no resistance, seeming almost relieved that his work had finally been understood. As he was led away, he cast one last look at the city lights twinkling in the distance. The trial of Julian Vance was a media circus. He pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, but his articulate, self-righteous defenses only underscored the chilling logic of his crimes. He believed, with every fiber of his being, that he was a righteous avenger, a sculptor of truth in a world blind to it. He was ultimately convicted on all counts and sentenced to life without parole. The capture of the Obsidian Carver brought a collective sigh of relief to Los Angeles. The city slowly began to heal, its vibrant pulse returning, its nights no longer haunted by the fear of unseen forces. But the scars remained. The names of Sarah Jenkins, Mark Thorne, Maria Rodriguez, Dr. Arthur Finch, Jeremy Vance, and Eleanor Vance were etched into the city's memory, a grim reminder of the darkness that could lurk beneath the surface of beauty and ambition. Miller returned to his routine, but he was changed. The case had shown him a new depth of human depravity, a new intellectualized form of evil. He hugged Chloe tighter, spent more time with Sarah, trying to mend the cracks the investigation had created in his own life. Reed, after writing her extensive final report, moved on to her next assignment, another city, another monster. But the Obsidian Carver, Julian Vance, with his chilling blend of artistic obsession and murderous precision, remained a profound, disturbing case in her long, storied career. He was a testament to the fact that sometimes the most dangerous monsters aren't those who hide in the shadows, but those who believe they are bringing light, one brutal, meticulous cut at a time. The city had unmasked its Carver, but the unsettling questions he raised about art, perception, and the hidden madness in plain sight would linger, like the faint, sharp scent of obsidian, for years to come.